Today I'm covering the section in chapter 4 called This Need Not Be. If you cannot hear the voice for God, it is because you do not choose to listen. That you do listen to the voice of your ego is demonstrated by your attitudes, your feelings, and your behavior, right? So based upon how we feel, if we're not feeling in pure joy and in pure peace, we know that we have chosen the ego. It's our attitudes and our behavior that reflect that. Yet this is what you want, he says. A part of us wants the ego. We keep choosing the ego. This is what you are fighting to keep, right? Our egos. And what you are vigilant to save, right? Our egos. We're trying all day and all night, every day and night to make our egos work. We are vigilant about preserving our ego. Your mind is filled with schemes to save the face of your ego, and you do not seek the face of Christ. The glass in which the ego seeks to see its face is dark indeed, right? Glass meaning like a mirror, okay? And it's dark because there is no light in the ego world. There is no truth. How can it maintain the trick of its experience except with mirrors, with illusion, with trickery? But where you look to find yourself is up to you. So we are the chooser. It's up to us. Which thought system are we going to choose, ego or spirit? I have said that you cannot change your mind by changing your behavior. But I have also said, and many times, that you can change your mind. So changing our behavior does nothing. We have to change our mind. We have to change which thought system we are adhering to. When your mood tells you that you have chosen wrongly, and this is so whenever you are not joyous, then know that this need not be. We don't ever need to be not joyous. That is our true nature. That is who we really are. We are one with God and one another, extending love eternally in a blissfully joyous state. That is our true nature. So every time that we don't feel that way, which for most of us is most of the time, we know that we have chosen wrongly, okay? So that's our tool in this ego thought system, is our feelings. It's the measurement by which we can tell if we've chosen correctly or not. Which thought system are we adhering to? We know that by our mood. That's the indicator that tells us, oh wait, I chose incorrectly. I'm going to choose again. So in this section, he's going to describe many different things that we do to keep ourselves trapped in the ego thought system. And then he's going to end some of those things that he's telling us with repeating the title of this section, which is This Need Not Be. And every time he says that, he's putting it in italics to really emphasize to us that this need not be. In every case, you have thought wrongly about some brother God created and are perceiving images your ego makes in a darkened glass. Because when we see with our ego perception, we see attack, we see separation, we see fear. So every time we see a brother, meaning any other being out there, and we perceive them as an ego, then we have chosen wrongly. And that need not be. Think honestly what you have thought that God would not have thought, and what you have not thought that God would have you think. Sometimes Jesus in A Course in Miracles reminds me of Dr. Seuss. Very twisty-turny words, very riddle-like words. So that is a twisty-turny way of saying that we have chosen incorrectly. We have thought something that God does not want us to think, and we are not thinking what God does want us to think. Search sincerely for what you have done and left undone accordingly, and then change your mind to think with God's. Okay, that's it. That's all we need to do here in this course, is to change our mind, change the way that we are perceiving to God's perception. This may seem hard to do, he says, but it's much easier than trying to think against it. We don't realize that the work that we put into trying to make this world real is a tremendous amount of work. We put so much effort into it. He's told us before in previous sections that it's fatiguing, it's tiring to work so hard to make the ego thought system real. So he's telling us it might seem hard to change our mind, but in truth, it's actually much harder work for us to continuously try to make this world real, to continuously try to make the ego real. He's also telling us that we don't have to fight our ego. We just have to relinquish our ego thought system in exchange for God's thought system. Your mind is one with God's. Denying this and thinking otherwise has held your ego together, but has literally split your mind. Okay, so we put all this effort into holding the ego in place, but in the meantime, it has split our mind. As a loving brother, meaning Jesus, I am deeply concerned with your mind and urge you to follow my example as you look at yourself and at your brother and see in both the glorious creations of a glorious Father. Okay, this has always been Jesus's message all along. He is one with us. He keeps telling us he is our older brother who has already awakened. All minds are joined. So he's telling us, just follow me. Do it like I did. Awaken to the glory of God. When you are sad, know this need not be. Depression comes from a sense of being deprived of something you want and do not have, right? In other words, expectations. The source of all unhappiness in life is having expectations that are not being met, right? This is where depression is coming from. Remember that you are deprived of nothing except by your own decisions, and then decide otherwise. So he's saying choose again. Notice, observe, see that when you are feeling bad, depressed, or any other emotion that is not joyous, know that you have chosen wrongly, and then choose again. When you are anxious, realize that anxiety comes from the capriciousness of the ego, right? The instability of the ego's moods causes anxiety because it's not stable, it's not dependable. And then he says, no, this need not be. You can be as vigilant against the ego's dictates as for them. So he's saying that all this effort that we keep putting into maintaining the ego thought system, we could use that same effort to exit the ego thought system. So this thing that he's talking about expectations, I just wanted to mention real quick that A Course in Miracles is not a religion. It is a self-study course. Jesus never wanted a religion. He doesn't want a religion based around his messages. He is trying to teach us, just as he was trying to teach over 2,000 years ago, that the power is within us. It's within our mind to choose God. That's what he always wanted us to understand, which is why he gave us these messages in this course, because it was misunderstood by a religion that was made called Christianity. So the reason I'm stopping for a moment from reading this section is because I want to mention that the course sounds very Christian because it's using all these Christian terms. But the concepts of what the course is teaching is not Christianity at all. It's not any religion. It's its own self-study course. It is mentioned in The Disappearance of the Universe by Gary Renard. I think it's that one. It might be one of his other books, but I think it's in DU, that it's explained that the religion that A Course in Miracles is actually closest to is Buddhism. And Buddhism is all about releasing expectations, right? Finding the middle way. It's also about knowing the world is an illusion. So the concepts that are being taught in the course are actually closest to the religion of Buddhism, but it's not the same at all. Buddhism cannot be replaced with the course. It's not the same. I just wanted to take a moment to point out that these concepts of truth that are in this course are found everywhere in bits and pieces of illusion within our world. So Buddhism is one of the religions where many bits and pieces of the truth can be found. Now, the Bible and Christianity also has bits and pieces of the truth in it. And the reason that this course is written with very Christian words is because a religion called Christianity was based upon Jesus's messages, but it got distorted. It got twisted into a whole fear-based ego thought system where we're sinners and we're bad and we have to earn God's love with our behavior, which is the exact opposite of what Jesus is telling us in the course. Okay? So Christianity and the course are not in alignment. And the reason there are so many Christian words in the course is because he wants to correct the mistakes of Christianity. Now, there are many things in the Bible that are true. Anywhere in the Bible that it talks about God being love and us being love is true. Anything that says the opposite of that is false. And that's why we have many corrections within this course using Christian words to explain what Jesus really meant, not the religion of Christianity that is so popular in our world today. When you feel guilty, remember that the ego has indeed violated the laws of God, but you have not, okay? Because you are not your ego. We're not our egos. We haven't done anything. This is an illusion. The world isn't real. So all this sinning we think we've done and all this separation that we think we're experiencing is not real. We have done nothing. And it is the ego that is violating the laws of God every time we have convinced ourselves otherwise, because we're listening to the ego. Leave the sins, he puts in quotes, of the ego to me, he says. And he puts sins in quotes because there are no sins. It's not real. We are all the innocent child of God. That is what atonement is for. It's for leaving it to Jesus to take care of it for us. We can call it Jesus, we can call it Holy Spirit, we can call it anything we want. But basically, it's the voice for God within our dream. It's the tether that connects us back to our real home. So the atonement is when we are giving it all over to Jesus or Holy Spirit. We have released our false beliefs. We have released our belief in sin. But until you change your mind about those whom your ego has hurt, the atonement cannot release you. So what does this mean? But until you change your mind about those whom your ego has hurt. What he means by that is every time we are looking upon others as an ego, we are hurting them. Every time we look out into the world and we see separation, we are hurting others and ourselves because we're all connected. There's only one of us. We are not egos, nor is anyone else. So every time we see that, we are hurting them. And so the atonement cannot release us as long as we continue to do that. While you feel guilty, your ego is in command because only the ego can experience guilt. This need not be, he says. Okay, so we don't have to be feeling guilty. And every time we do feel guilty, we know we've chosen wrongly. We've chosen the ego. So we are hurting other egos by seeing them as egos. But that can go in both directions. That could be, oh, I don't like that person, or I hate that person because of X, Y, and Z reason. Or it can be the opposite. Oh, this person is amazing. This person is the best, right? It's all about specialness. Both of those ends of the spectrum are seeing those as egos and separate and different. Watch your mind for the temptations of the ego and do not be deceived by it. It offers you nothing. When you have given up this voluntary dispiriting, okay, remember we learned about that in a previous section. Dispiriting means not being in alignment with spirit. And so we volunteer to dispirit ourselves whenever we are believing in the ego thought system, which is pretty much all the time. When you have given up this voluntary dispiriting, you will see how your mind can focus and rise above fatigue and heal. All right, so the fatigue is from us trying really, really hard to make the ego thought system work. That's where the fatigue is coming from. And the way that we heal is by letting that go. Yet you are not sufficiently vigilant against the demands of the ego to disengage yourself. This need not be, he tells us. So he's saying we don't have to be so weak and wimpy against the ego's thought system that we can actually choose otherwise. The habit of engaging with God in his creations is easily made if you actively refuse to let your mind slip away. So we simply need to be conscious of it. We need to stay aware of the choice that we are making with our mind. The problem is not one of concentration. It is the belief that no one, including yourself, is worth consistent effort. Side with me consistently against this deception and do not permit this shabby belief to pull you back. Fancy words to say, just don't get tricked. Don't get tricked by the ego. The disheartened are useless to themselves and to me, but only the ego can be disheartened. So the disheartened are useless to themselves and me. That's all of us when we are in the ego thought system. We are useless to him because his whole job is to get us to wake up. That's what he's trying to do. And we're useless to him as long as we are continuously believing in the ego thought system. And he's saying only the ego can be disheartened because it's only when we are in the ego thought system that we would even ever feel disheartened. Have you really considered how many opportunities you have had to gladden yourself and how many of them you have refused? So these opportunities that he speaks of, he's just talking about time. It's every now moment. Every now moment we have had an opportunity to feel glad, to be in our truth of spirit. But then we keep choosing wrongly. So that's why he's saying, do you know how many you have refused? Yeah, every now moment of our lives, of every lifetime that we've ever had, we have refused. We have refused our truth. We have refused to be glad. There is no limit to the power of a son of God, but he can limit the experience of his power as much as he chooses. So we can take our own power away by believing in the ego thought system. We are very powerful beings. We can never not be powerful. We can just refuse to acknowledge our power by choosing incorrectly. Your mind and mine can unite in shining your ego away, releasing the strength of God into everything you think and do. So when we practice forgiveness, which is the miracle, which is looking with correct perception, we will see that everyone and everything is just spirit. And as we do that, that is when we are choosing the strength of God in everything that we think and do. Do not settle for anything less than this and refuse to accept anything but this as your goal. All right, that's what Jesus did when he was living here. This is how he awakened. This is how he learned his truth. And then he was attempting to teach everyone else. He was vigilant for God's love. He was vigilant for truth. And he's asking us to do the same, to make that our only goal. Watch your mind carefully for any beliefs that hinder its accomplishment and step away from them. Okay, so we want to watch and observe ourselves making ego decisions. We want to see what we do. We want to start to understand our mind so that we can then choose differently. Judge how well you have done this by your own feelings, for this is the one right use of judgment. Okay, and we can even replace judgment in this case with discernment. All right, so when talking about correct judgment, we can think of it as discernment. And we can judge or discern whether we are choosing the correct thought system by our feelings. If we feel anything other than joy and love, we have chosen incorrectly. Our feelings are a tool for us to know which thought system we are believing. Judgment, like any other defense, can be used to attack or protect, to hurt or to heal. So we can continuously judge others from an ego perspective, or we can heal with spirit's perspective. The ego, and he puts in italics, should be brought to judgment and found wanting there. Without your own allegiance, protection, and love, the ego cannot exist. Right? So if we don't put energy and effort into protecting our ego, it simply would not exist. We are putting a tremendous amount of effort into making our illusory egos feel real. Let it be judged truly, and you must withdraw allegiance, protection, and love from it. So he's saying if we judge truly, meaning knowing the truth of God's thought system, then we would no longer have allegiance to the ego's thought system. We would no longer protect it. You are a mirror of truth in which God himself shines in perfect light. To the ego's dark glass, you need but say, and he puts in quotes, I will not look there because I know these images are not true. Okay, so he wants us to look upon the world and to say, I will not look here, meaning with my ego's eyes, my ego's thought system, I will not look here because I know that what I'm looking upon, these other egos that I think that I see out there, isn't true. Then let the Holy One shine on you in peace, knowing that this and only this must be, knowing that everyone and everything is spirit and only spirit. His mind shone on you in your creation and brought your mind into being. His mind still shines on you and must shine through you. Your ego cannot prevent him from shining on you, but it can prevent you from letting him shine through you. Okay, so we are always a child of God. We cannot stop that. We cannot stop God's love for us. We cannot stop Jesus's love for us. But we can prevent that light from shining through us, meaning practicing forgiveness, which is the miracle. changing our perception, seeing with love, seeing that everyone and everything out there is just love, knowing that they are only spirit, and feeling that in our feelings, in our heart. This is how we heal. And this is how we let him, could be God, could be Jesus, could be Holy Spirit, could be anything else you want to call it, but it is the light, the love. We let that come through us when we are doing that, because we know who we are and we know who everyone else is. So that light shines through us and extends to everyone and everything that we look upon with our spiritual sight. The first coming of Christ is merely another name for the creation, for Christ is the Son of God. The second coming of Christ means nothing more than the end of the ego's rule and healing of the mind. I was created like you in the first, and I have called you to join me in the second. So the world made something very different of that message of Jesus's. They think that the first coming was when he was here in a body, and the second coming means that he's going to come back in a body and he's going to save us all. No. What he's explaining here is that the first coming is when God created his son, okay, which we call Christ. You can call it anything you want. It's just a word. But that is the one child of God, is Christ. That's Jesus. That's us. We are the one child of God. That was the first coming. The second coming is the end of the ego's rule. It is the end of us believing that we are separate. That is the second coming. That is Christ consciousness. That's us awakening to our truth. That's what the second coming means. He's telling us he was created just like us in the first coming of Christ, because there's only one of us, right? We were all created as the child of God. And he's calling to us to join him in the second coming, which means knowing our truth, the end of the ego thought system, because he's already done that. He awakened. And now he wants us to join him. I, meaning Jesus, am in charge of the second coming. And my judgment, which is used only for protection, cannot be wrong because it never attacks. His judgment never attacks. Yours may be so distorted that you believe I was mistaken in choosing you. I assure you that this is a mistake of your ego. Do not make it for humility. Your ego is trying to convince you that it is real and that I am not. Because if I am real, I am no more real than you are. That knowledge, and I assure you that it is knowledge, means that Christ has come into your mind and healed it. So if we give our mind to Christ, he will heal it. I do not attack your ego. I do work with your higher mind, the home of Holy Spirit, whether you are asleep or awake. Just as your ego does with your lower mind, which is its home. Okay, so whether we're asleep or awake, whether we are aware or unaware, whether we're practicing this course or not practicing this course, our higher mind is being worked with by Holy Spirit, by Christ, by Jesus, whatever you want to call it. Everyone's higher mind is connected. All minds are joined, and it is being worked with by Spirit. And he's telling us ego works with our lower mind. So whether we're aware of it or not, whether we're working to be aware of our ego thought system or not, our ego is always working with our lower mind, whether we know it or not. I am your vigilance in this because you are too confused to recognize your own hope. I am not mistaken, he says. All right, so because we're so confused, he's saying, I'm here to help you. Don't worry. Your mind will elect to join with mine, and together we are invincible. You and your brother will yet come together in my name, and your sanity will be restored. Okay, so when he says that we're going to come together in his name, again, this is not about religion. It's not about saying the name Jesus. It's not about Christ. It's not about what we think those words mean within our world, within our ego world. It's not about that. It is about when he's talking about the coming of Christ. It is about knowing that we are the one child of God who is innocent and completely loved by God, that when we do that, our sanity is restored. And that is what he means by coming together in my name. Meaning in the name of Christ, because we are Christ. We are the one child of God. I raised the dead by knowing that life is an eternal attribute of everything that the living God created. Why do you believe it is harder for me to inspire the dispirited or to stabilize the unstable? I do not believe that there is an order of difficulty in miracles. You do, he says. So he's saying we are capable of all of these sort of miraculous acts that people think that Jesus did when he was here, that we are capable of that. The reason he was able to do these miracles, and I put it in quotes because it's the world's definition of a miracle, that he was able to heal the sick and raise the dead and things like that. The reason he was able to appear to do things like that within this illusion is because he did not believe in the illusion. He knew that it was just an illusion. So he could use his mind to do anything within his dream because it's just a dream. And he's teaching us the same. We are the same as him. We are just as powerful. We are all one. I have called and you will answer, okay? Because we're all waking up. We can resist it as long as we want, but we're still all waking up eventually because there's only one of us. I understand that miracles are natural because they are expressions of love. Okay, so it's telling us right here that miracles are an expression of love. Now, this is called A Course in Miracles, and I have seen people in the Course community go round and round and round in circles trying to talk about what certain words mean in this book. This is a waste of time. This is taking the messages of this course and plopping them right down in the ego world and analyzing them to death, just going in circles. This is silliness. The miracles that are expressed in this book can't be defined with just one blurb or one definition. The miracles that are spoken of in this book, not worldly miracles, not meaning, raising the dead and the things that he was just referring to that appeared to happen in his illusory dream. The miracles that are being referred to here is a shift in perception, which is the same as an expression of love. They're the same thing. When we shift our perception to see spirit and only spirit, we are expressing love when we do that. That is the miracle. The miracle is what Jesus is teaching us to do in this course, which is to overlook the ego's thought system, to deny the ego's thought system, to look beyond it, to see truth. That is the miracle. It is a shift in perception, and it is an expression of love. My calling you is as natural as your answer and is inevitable. It is inevitable. And we are all answering the call of truth, the call of Christ, which is who we really are. We are the one child of God. So what he's telling us in this section is that all of these things that we do to deny our truth and to solidify the ego's thought system need not be. We can choose again.